Yo guys, what is good? I hope you're all doing absolutely amazing and are trading safely in the markets. It's your boy VGOK and I'm back with another video for you guys today. Now in this video I'm going to be looking at over the indices and the Forex pairs that I like to look at, pretty much a market outlook, and I'm also going to be having a look over the news as well. Now I appreciate that you guys would have found this video a bit more useful had I have released it on Sunday. However, I've reserved that privilege for those of you that are in my private mentorship who get to see it live at the time of the recording. Now obviously if that's something that interests you and you're wanting to know more about that, then do drop me a message on my Instagram. The link to my Instagram is going to be in the description below, and just drop me a message saying mentorship and we can discuss things further. But with that all being said, let's jump straight into the market outlook. So yeah, starting off this week's market outlook call. As always, let's have a look into the news for next week before we get started, and just refreshing, let's see if it has updated on Forex Factory, because I know it has grayed out anything on a Wednesday, which is quite unusual, so I just want to see if that's remaining an issue. Yeah, still remaining issue, so I'm going to have a look at investing.com as well. But just a quick look over the news for the coming week. Obviously today we've got the US dollar daylight saving time, so the times will change in the US dollar today at some point, or it probably already happened. So everyone's back on the same timing, and it's all like, all the confusion is going to be gone, and the timings will be usual in terms of session timings for us. But yeah, looking ahead, we've got these congressional elections on Tuesday for the dollar, so that's definitely going to be affecting the dollar. And I think I had a quick look at this last week as well. It's not opening up, but I believe it's every 2 years, this election thing here. And then as we can see, I think the main day is going to be Thursday for us, because we've got nice US dollar CPI news at 1:30 p.m. We've traded that in the past a fair few times now, and we've had decent trades off of it, so hoping to get some decent moves off of that. Euro, there's a French bank holiday, but obviously there's loads of countries that make up the euro in Europe to make up that use the euro, I should say. So obviously it's not going to affect the whole of the euro too much, so don't look too much into that. But there is a US dollar bank holiday, which is the main thing I want to sort of touch on, and obviously the Canadian dollar bank holiday on Friday. No idea what it's for, but I mean the main thing to understand is there is a bank holiday on that day. So potentially the dollar won't be as volatile, won't be moving as much on that Friday. So keep that into account. But there is obviously news at the same day coming out on that day as well, so just keep that in mind as well. So yeah, we'll probably will see some movement on that Friday as well, but like I said, I think the main day to target for next week is going to be Thursday next week. But yeah, in terms of the news, obviously not as volatile, not as crazy as last week, as you can see right in here from last week's news. But yeah, looking into this week coming, we should be okay. And I'm going to have a look into investing.com as well. And we've got the ECB president, so the European Central Bank President Lagarde, speaking for Euro at 8:40 AM UK time on Monday. That's the only 3-star news that we've got here, so the high impact news, which is equivalent to obviously the red folders on Forex Factory. Tuesday, the main thing I wanted to check out was the Wednesday. So yeah, it's still showing up. There's nice news that's showing up on Wednesday. We've got the standard crude oil inventories at 3:30 p.m. UK time, whereas on Forex Factory it's just not showing up yet. So I don't know if that's an error on the website, but yeah, there'll definitely be some sort of news happening on. There's a lot of speeches on that day as well, but yeah, there'll definitely be movement though. It's not like there's nothing happening on that Wednesday, so just keep that in mind as well. And again, as we look into the Thursday, there's that key CPI news that we're looking to target, and the standard initial jobless claims that always come out weekly for the dollar. And then we do have GDP news for the pound at 7 AM on Friday. But yeah, apart from that, there's not much else to really look at. So a lot quieter news week this week there compared to last week. So it should be a decent week to trade. We should get some nice moves. But yeah, moving on to the actual market outlook, and let's start off with DXY. Now obviously from last week we've had a lot of news. Like I've just said, we've had the FOMC federal funds rate last week on Wednesday. Then we've had the unemployment rates for the dollar on the Friday in NFP. So we've had lots and lots of movement for the dollar. And as we can see on the daily time frame, the previous day's movement, so that previous on that Friday's movement was completely bearish, very strongly bearish, rejecting from that 45-minute zone, as you can see right in there. And as we go down into lower time frames, we can see exactly how aggressive to the downside it's been. So once we actually fully take a look at the US dollar in a bit more detail, the obvious area I'm going to potentially be looking at to look for more sells in is going to be this area here, this buy to sell region in here. You can see this wick has spiked up into here, getting into this last demand zone, supply zone over here, and pushing price further down and breaking below this significant structure point. Now, why is this a significant structure point? It's because it's created a higher high. So, because it's created a higher high, it's significant higher low, and once that, if anything that can take that out, is going to be a successful break of structure. So when we look into the 30-minute and then the 15-minute and the 5-minute time frame, we can see in more detail how this buy to sell was sort of made up of. So let's look at the 15-minute first, and the first thing I'm going to sort of see is going to be this area of supply right in here. So there's going to be potential drop, a base within this little wick here, and then the drop off in price for that supply zone. So keeping an eye on that, and then we can definitely use this alert right here just to let us know when price gets close to that zone. And we're probably going to edit this zone just right now on the 5-minute, because we can see a drop, and probably going to increase this up to here to include this little doji candle over here as the base as well, just to be slightly more accurate. Now obviously it can keep going slightly higher up, maybe retrace into this wick as well, so potentially getting into that wick and then going down, or potentially even the open of that 5-minute candle. Let's see what it looks like on the 3-minute and the 1-minute time frames. Now on the 3-minute time frame, you can see that the little doji is made up of this redistribution of price over here. And on the 1-minute time frame, as we zoom out and have a quick look at what it's saying, I think we could potentially come back up into this top zone as well over here, this top 1-minute candle. We've had a really nice buy to sell manipulative move, and price has just about come up in here. It hasn't really closed within this candlestick, it's just about wicked into the open, just about, or maybe not even. I don't think it has, so maybe it could clear liquidity above this wick and then spike up above, maybe close within the zone and then drop down. That could be an option as well. So keeping these two zones as our main supply zones for the for the dollar this week. So keeping another alert just at the top of that wick, so we know if we do get a liquidity capture above there, we can look for potential higher sells. But looking to monitor in those two zones for the supply. And then as we sort of have another look across, in terms of the demand zones which it's in, this one has now been invalidated, so we can get rid of that, and this one as well, and it's currently in this bottom demand zone right over here. So when we look into the 15-minute and the 5-minute and see what this was actually made up of, I think the 5-minute sort of describes it the best. We can see the sell to buy manipulation sort of move in there quite clearly, and we can see there's like actually a nice imbalance that exists within there as well. So potentially looking within here for that demand zone, just sort of refining it into there just to get it as accurate as possible. And as we sort of scroll across, we can see that price has actually just entered that zone relatively recently in terms of the end of Friday's trading. So definitely want to see how market opens, how it respects the zone. Is it going to gap down deeper into the zone? And if so, then it's not really showing much strength in that zone. Or is it going to be showing some sort of more consolidation? Is it just going to be going flat, or are we going to be going seeing sharp movements upwards, gaps upwards, to show that this demand zone is actually quite strong and it's proving to show us strong movements to the upside. Now obviously, following our trading plan, we don't really want to be looking to trade at market open, which should be in about 5 hours ish. I think it's roughly about 9 to 10 p.m. UK time is when markets open again. So we'll definitely keep an eye on it around then, but ideally I'm not looking to place any trades around then. Ideal times of taking trades is going to be that London-New York overlap. So if I put the kill zones back on, it's going to be in the main session open times, from pretty much 8 AM onwards basically is what I'm going to be looking at, looking to place trades. But yeah, that looks pretty good for the dollar. They're the main zones I want to be sort of seeing price react from. So I'm just going to set one more alert here, just because we can see in here the lower high that created the lowest low over here. So any movement above here should mean a good break of structure to the upside, and that should be confirmation of this demand zone holding, and we could get positive moves on the dollar if that happens. early on in the week. So just looking at that for DXY right now, and moving on to Euro USD. And as we can see, obviously, I think most of the EU, GU, AU, and NU, I probably won't go through all of them because they're all going to look very similar, in all honesty. They've all experienced similar same moves from FOMC and from NFP moves from last week. And as we can see on Euro USD right now, the 30-minute demand zone that held was this one in here, this sell to buy candle. It took out these lows over here. We saw price get into it early on Thursday, potential opportunities for buys on Thursday, which then led for the buys on Friday as well. So now just looking into the price action once more, let's look at the 4-hour time frame. I think looks good. I'm just going to turn the sessions off as well. And what we can actually see in this region here is we've got this rally, this doji candle here on the 4-hour, this black candle as the doji as the base, and then the rally upwards, which breaks structure above this point in here, because this did go on to create this lower low over here. So that's going to be one demand zone I really want to sort of concentrate on and have a look in, right in there. So keeping an eye on that, and let's label it as the 4-hour demand zone, so we know exactly what time frame it's referring to. And then as we go deeper down into the time frames, we can see exactly how that 4-hour time demand zone is made up of. Initially, the first thing we're going to be noticing is this big wick to the downside. It's a very manipulative move because it's so quick. It's a big sell to buy movement in that wick. If we go to the 30-minute, we can probably start to see what it's comprised of a lot more on the 5-minute right there as well. And we can see that was exactly the time of NFP last week. On that Friday, we can see at 12:30 dropped down quite aggressively and then shot back up straight away. So that's the key 4-hour zone there. And then in terms of other zones on the smaller time frames that may be slightly more accurate, I do also want to have a look at this imbalance fill just above that wick there. So I'm going to set this alert just to over here, so we know when it gets close, and then this one I'll keep at that 4-hour zone just there, so we're prepared for the movements. They're the main ones I really want to have a look at the moment for Euro USD. In terms of the supply side, in terms of the sell side, going back to the daily time frame, what I've drawn on earlier on today was this daily supply, which potentially could be giving us a further move down, which I'm going to have a look into now as well. So here we can see this buy to sell movement on the daily time frame for Euro USD. We can see there's an imbalance fill over here, and it does go above this huge trend line, which has been sort of obeying for a long time. I think if we go to the monthly time frame, or the weekly time frame I should say, probably should be better. As we sort of zoom out, we can see, look at this trend line. It's got 1, 2, 3, almost 4, 5, 6 touches, almost 5 or 6 touches of a trend line here, and then this is the candle that goes up above the trend line. We do see a big drop down from that daily supply zone right there, so I am keeping that in mind. One thing about that does not look good for this supply is how aggressively this reaction up has been. So that's not a good sign for obviously on the sell side of things, on the supply side of things. But ideally we want to see how price can definitely, it may be some sort of a retracement, into a discounted price region from here. So it's getting up, it's already at 61.8 retracement. We've got multiple wicks in over here, so potentially liquidity capturing above these wicks, getting into this discounted region. Obviously my ideal retracement value is going to be 71 to 78%, if you didn't know that already. So ideally I'm going to see what happens to get in, what happens when price gets into that region. If we do see distribution around this region somewhere, then I won't be scared of taking any sort of counter trend sort of sells as well at the same time. But yeah, as we can see, as we sort of go further down the time frame, so we can see in a bit more detail, I'm going to get rid of this just so it looks a bit cleaner, and we can start to see where exactly we can potentially look to sell off from. So we can see here, this is the structural point here, which created the higher high. We then had this movement down that broke structure, so something ideally around here which conveniently lies nicely above all those wicks. So this area here for the supply, I know it's a very large zone, but in terms of what I can see at the moment is what I think looks best at the moment, and probably as we go into the 30-minute time frame, we can start to see these smaller imbalances which still haven't been filled in. So they could be those optimum deep retracement sort of sell mitigations over there. We do have this buy to sell movement here as well, but yeah, I could probably see it you know, coming into this imbalance here about 1.00571 for euro, and if it does decide to drop from there, then you know, we'll trade it accordingly. So yeah, setting alerts wise, definitely worth putting one at the start over here of the supply zone. So just labeling that up nicely there, and I'll have another one as it can take out this wick over here. So take out this high over here. If it does that, then we'll be looking for it to spike up into this blue line, into that imbalance fill, and potentially drop down for those sells. So covered on both ends in terms of the euro, similar to how we've analyzed the DXY, pretty much opposite of how we've done the DXY, because obviously they're oppositely correlated. But yeah, that's what we're looking at for Euro USD. GBP USD I think is going to be fairly similar. The main sell zone I believe is going to be in this region here from when I was analyzing earlier. So just cleaning up the chart obviously from last week's analysis, and the main thing I can see right now is going to be that 45-minute time frame right here for this candlestick. For the supply side, that looks pretty nice. It almost looks like equal highs, so I am keeping in the back of my mind that potentially this whole zone is going to get taken out, and potentially the highs over here will get you know, liquidated. And as we can see, just above these equal highs, we can see there's a nice imbalance fill over here that it can potentially come in and fill in. So just keeping that that sort of idea right in there, and we can draw another supply zone just above right in here, and we can see here there's a gap down of price. GU, it came to fill in the gap and then really drop down and break structure. So definitely want to see, you know, this region here to see if it will actually, you know, get respect on any level. So there'll be the two main zones for the sells in terms of GBP USD. And as we have another look into the higher time frames, in terms of the buy side, I was hoping for a deeper movement here, but then upon a reflection of how this reaction happened, I think it was this 4-hour drop base rally which got the respect. So you can see this drop, the base within this doji over here, and then the rally up in this reaccumulation. Price came back into it to show respect and, you know, mitigate, and then it did give that bigger move to the upside. So I think that's what is reacted off in general over there. And as we go into lower time frames, we can see, you know, the manipulation that's occurred, you know, in that demand zone. So we can see, you know, any lows in here, they were taken out as price dipped below, and then sharp movement to the upside. So we definitely want to see, you know, whether there's a sell to buy candle, whether there's an imbalance or anything like that in there to potentially look at. And I think on the 1 minute I may have already marked it up over here. Yeah, so here we've got a nice, this is the main sell that took out the liquidity below those previous lows. We have that sharp movement up, and we do have this rally, base rally, which breaks structure over here. So this is still going to be valid in my opinion, I think. And obviously there are higher zones, there's imbalances over here, there's imbalances over here, there's all this sort of stuff to contend with as well. So definitely want to have a keep having a look at that. I think this one is definitely looking quite valid as well, so don't want to disregard that in any way. Let's move those zones across so we know they're ready. And I'm going to borrow this alert here so we know when price gets close to that first zone. So that's going to be the main sort of demand zone I think we're going to be looking into. So this one and then this one as well. I believe they're both on the 5 minute as well. Now, this one is on the 5 minute time frame, looks pretty nice. This one's on the 1 minute time frame, so if you want to label those in, then please do so as well. So it's 1 minute demand, and then this one I think is a 5 minute demand. Like so. So they're the main zones that we're looking into. Obviously, ideally don't really want to be trading in between. If we may get some scalps on the smaller time frame on the intraday basis, scalp basis, then they might be worth taking some smaller trades. But yeah, at the moment we're not looking to trade in between these zones. And something else I've just spotted as well, look how equal all these highs are. You know, they're just asking to be taken out, I think. So all the highs, you know, above this area in here, they're all pretty equal. So ideally, if we can get price taking out this liquidity, getting up into the supply zone and then dropping, you know, we could potentially see something happening in there. for the sells. And just marking on this as well, because there is a slight break in this drop off here, and it looks like the perfect spot to have a drop base drop on some time frame which takes out this previous demand point over here. So just putting a line over there, it may just take out the highs, spike into this and then drop. So what might be the best thing to do is just extending this supply zone to include that as well, just so we're prepared, and then obviously moving the alert down as well so we know when it gets there. But yeah, that looks pretty good at the moment for GU as well. Moving on to AU and NU, I probably won't go through these in as much detail because they look pretty similar. As you can see, AU is already in this supply zone, and it's come fairly deep into it. So unless we get a break of structure, below a key structure point, so when we look into the 15 and the 5 minute, are we going to be seeing that on any level? Potentially in this region here, we can see that this higher low created this higher high, and we have successfully broken below it. So potentially we'll see how market opens. Obviously we're going to have to definitely see how market opens because they're already seeing a wick here, wick rejection up here. So whether it wants a gap or stuff like that, we're going to have to wait and see. If it gaps down, then we may have an opportunity to play a gap fill entry for a further sell down. So that's what I'm sort of thinking of there in terms of that supply zone. The supply zone, as you can see on the 5 minute, is quite clear. On the 5 minute, as you can see, a buy to sell manipulative move, takes out any liquidity above these previous highs here and then gives that big drop off in price. So definitely want to keep an eye on this zone and see if we can get that really nice proof of supply. Otherwise, I think it's pretty much similar to all these other pairs. How we've been looking at demand on EU, GU, on EU and GU. It's going to be those similar sort of areas. So in here, you can see the NFP manipulation that happened over here, this sell to buy movement. So something in there, I think, would be the first obvious port of call in terms of the demand. So just marking that on right in there, and yeah, that looks pretty good. So on the 30-minute time frame, that is, we can see how there's two bearish candles, and then we see the spike up over there. 15-minute, the 5-minute, as you can see, it's built up of all this. I think potentially we may even get a higher mitigation into here. So just setting an alert, I think, for this low. Once this low gets taken out, we'll know, and then we can potentially see price getting into here, reaccumulate, and we can look for buys in that region for AU. And I think NU is going to look very similar indeed. So the NU demand zone that corresponds with that is going to be this, I think. Just off a quick glance, yeah, it looks pretty good. So just including all of that in there. So yeah, that looks good for the demand zone. Of course, the supply side for NU, you can see it's pretty much got back up into this area again. So whether it wants to just take liquidity out above this wick, so probably worth putting an alert just above there. And then if we can get a liquidity capture above that, if it's a buy to sell movement, if it distributes above that, anything like that, then we can look to potentially still sell off this supply zone, and look to take first TP in this demand zone. And if it does look to take out all of this, then we've got further areas in here to look to take profit in, basically. So yeah, AU, GU, NU and EU, they all look fairly similar in that respect. Understandably. The next one I'm going to have a look at is Gbpjpy. Haven't really analysed this as much. Did a bit of analysis on this late last week, so it's probably going to be pretty similar to what I've already drawn out on this. But looking into the daily time frame again, obviously at one point we were looking into this buy to sell movement here, and we were catching sells down in here, but then obviously we saw it moving the other way. So definitely something within here has to be valid for demand, because that's where we saw this bias here, this bearish order flow here, which was valid at one point, and then that's what took it out. So we definitely want to have a look into here somewhere, which we're going to have a look deeper and probably a bit more accurately as well. So bear with me on that as we look into that right now. And then if we look into the 8 hour, we can start to see how it's all comprised of. We've got an imbalance fill in there, which can potentially be filled in. You can start to see the rallies over here. So I might split that into 2 separate zones. So keep that as one zone, and then the other zone as this rally based rally. And then we can, okay, obviously we've got a supply zone there, so I'll keep that alert there for the supply, and I'll keep one alert obviously for the demand zones, and then we'll keep you know, monitoring that and trading that accordingly as well. And then moving down into the 4 hour, we can start to see this area here looks a lot more probable than this area down here, so we'll keep that in just in case, because there is imbalances still existing below in there. But for the buy side, for the demand side of things, this area looks really nice, and as we zoom in, even on the 45 minute, we can start to see this reaccumulation a lot more clearer and a lot more, you can tell what we're looking for in here. So we can see the lows within there that it gets taken out, the sell to buy nature of that, and then the imbalance showing the true strength of that move over there as well. So potentially filling an imbalance within this demand zone, but you know, we've got the alert set, we know exactly where we're looking for that, but probably it might be worth just putting a line in there so we know for that deep optimum entry right in there. So just keeping an eye on that for Gbpjpy. And in terms of the supply side of things, the main one that I can spot right now is going to be this base drop over here, just because that's the one that takes out this demand point here, which created this higher high. So if we do come into here, we may see a redistribution to sell down again, and we'll look to take profit in this region and then this region if it gets to it, but most likely we'll be taking the most volume off at this region here for those sells. So I think it's worth looking into those, keeping those in mind as well. Just looking at that supply zone a lot more now. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to include this, just keep that the same, I think, because we can see that this demand zone started here, and you can see that this base drop, so the base within that little wick in there could be what the key significant supply zone to play off of, instead of just this imbalanced one in here. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at for Gbpjpy. Let's have a look at UJ as well. Now UJ, I have avoided it because it's been so crazy bullish and it's been hard to get in on the wave, but now it's tapped off that monthly supply, which we were talking about a good couple of weeks ago now. As you can see here, we've got these highs over here, the monthly candle that shoots up above and then goes down and obviously goes on to create the lower low. So we've got a nice supply zone within there, and as we scroll over, we can see our price has now finally got into that zone, and we're experiencing a key nice rejection from that zone right in there. As you can see, as we zoom in on, even on the monthly time frame, we've got a monthly candle here with a big wick rejection on the top side here, and then this monthly candle at the moment of November is currently bearish. So keeping an eye on that, and as we can see going on to the 4 hour time frame, also looking at the daily, we can see how it's made up. But as you can see, the drop off isn't as drastic on the daily, so potentially coming into this area and reaccumulating, which we may already be doing over here. So just want to have another look at all of this. Let's clean up these zones because they're pretty old, and we can have a fresh look at things. Obviously this area, there's an alert sitting here for good reason, because we can see an obvious you know, buy to sell scenario up there. So if price does come up to here, there's good argument to potentially look for sells in that region. But yeah, in terms of the bullish side of things, we can see that this wick here took out liquidity below here, went higher. This was definitely a good break of structure. It broke above this point and this point here as well. So, and then we saw the retracement down, another very strong wick rejection up, so we're going to have a look at that on the smaller time frames as well. And I think there's some sort of demand zone which I really want to sort of analyze and take note of in this region. So the 5 minutes, just want to have a quick look how it looks over here. Yeah, I'm going to stick with the 30 minute, I think, which looked good on that sort of area. No, it wasn't, it was the 15, sorry. So yeah, 15 minute time frame, we can see there's a clean imbalanced area here. And as you can see, the entire selling region there. So I'll probably have two different zones. So one zone like that, and then one zone on the start of the wick dropping down like so. And as you can see, we've already tapped into this first zone here. Great rejection, which is always a good sign. It's a little hint saying, okay, this is going to be a decent sign, we just probably need to go in deeper. And as I said, normally with price closing in the zone instead of just wicking into the zone, that's a good sign. So now I think we've got equal lows in that region. I'm just going to draw that on, and then we'll have another analyze on the lower time frames in there. So let's go into the 3 minute and below. As we can see over here, yeah, so we can see the equal lows in this region here. So the low there, and then I think this is that manipulation just about. I think we may be able to get another manipulation below because it didn't really go below that much. Let's have a look in the 1 minute. We haven't even mitigated this last sell to buy candle either. So I think potentially for UJ, either waiting to get price into this region, taking liquidity out under this low here, and then going up. If we see that, then we could potentially see confirmation for buys. So looking into there would be a good sign, a good place to start. Or if we come and make a new lower low, so reacting into something over here. So just changing it to the 3 minute and check the 2 minute as well. Yeah, I think if we look into there, that probably makes sense as well. So this supply zone here. Now I've included this area because there's a potential drop base within the wicks and then the drop. But there is obviously imbalance sitting up there as well. And as we go onto the 1 minute time frame and extend this zone out, it's just about tapped this supply zone. Let's see, that's the first tap off there. It's decent little rejection. We have had a rejection just below the zone here, which is a good sign as well. So potentially it might come up a bit higher up into the zone, into this imbalance filled area, and then drop off. If that's the case, then you know, we'll try and play the continuation sells down. That way, you know, this buy here will simply be a nice little hedge. But obviously it does depend on how market opens tonight. So that's what I'm looking at for UJ. Let's end things off by looking at the 3 indices, so US30, Nasdaq, and the S&P. So first of all, let's look at the US30, and I think, yeah, I have really neglected these indices recently because I think Forex pairs have just been moving so much nicer compared to you know, indices. As you can see, look at the volatility, the manipulation. If you're not in on this buy, it's pretty hard to get in afterwards. You know, as you can see, these demand zones, they just haven't been met. So it's been hard to really catch them. I have been analysing it. It's just you know, seeing that difficulty in it. But we have, as we can see from previous analysis, reacted into this supply and dropped down quite heavily, breaking structure below this point. So if we go into the 5 minute, we can see the break of structure down in this move a lot clearer below here. And we are retracing back up into this region, so potential sells do make sense on US30. So if we have a look, I'd say in this region up to here for that sell zone, that supply zone, then as we can see how it's already reacted into there and how it's already reacted into, I don't really see a point in it going any higher than this unless it's just a quick little liquidity capture above this. And in terms of the structure break, I think we've just about broken structure in the last move over here, so potentially retracing up into here and then selling off could be an option. So just marking on this zone in here, I think that would make sense. Potential rough equal highs in here, so liquidity capturing above there and then dropping down could be an option as well. But yeah, just getting rid of this previous one here, I think that looks pretty good. Otherwise, if it does seem to go higher, then ideally you know, we'll have a new structural point to be broken, and then we'll just keep analysing for that proof of supply. But that looks pretty good for the supply side of things for US30. And I think on the other side of things, the buy side of things, we could potentially look into this region here. So for the demand, right there, and then also I want to have a look into this rally-based rally area over there as well. So looking into the 5 minute, yeah, let's look into there and account for that as well. This obviously looks pretty nice as well because we've got, I don't know if it's trendline liquidity or whether it's just a random selection of lows. I think whatever it is, whether it's trendline liquidity or whether it's just a set of lows, this here was a manipulation, and we've got clean sell to buy movement. We've got a clean imbalance that's not been filled in as well on US30. So here potentially for that optimum you know, mitigation for what's that, US30, and then we can set some alerts around for that for the buy side of things as well. But yeah, that looks pretty good for US30. I like the way that that's sort of forming, the way that's sort of you know, moving at the moment. So let's keep that like that for now. And even on the 5 minute, as we zoom in for the supply side again, this buy to sell candle in here, potentially I think potentially price can come into that once more. As we go into the 1 minute, it's not quite tapped in, so potentially coming up, liquidity capturing above that wick could be an option. Getting into that 5 minute order block over here and then dropping down could be an option as well. So just gonna mark that on as well as a separate supply zone, and we'll label it up as well because it's kind of overlapping there on the chart. So that looks pretty good. And obviously we'll set an alert around, let's do it here so we know if it does come up. Okay, so I have run out of alerts, but looks pretty good so far. Yeah, that's okay. So yeah, moving on to NASDAQ, and I believe that probably will look slightly similar in the sense that obviously here we've got this previous demand zone in here. As we go back into here, we can see the nice rally-based rally. I think it's probably on a 45 or a 30 minute time frame. 45 minute, there you go. So the 45 minute time frame, we can see this rally-based rally that takes out this structural point over here, this supply point. So as we scroll over and see how prices reacted into there, we're starting to get rejections away from there. So that's a good sign for NASDAQ buys. Now, what we need to really have a look at is on lower time frames. Is this going to be the main spring? Is that going to be the main, fake out, the main manipulation? Let's have a look. Probably on the 1 minute is going to be the best thing to see. So, as we see, price comes back into there, touches the demand zone again, and as soon as it does that, it does shoot off again. So, there's definitely this area. I want to see if price can, re-mitigate this area, come and revisit this area over here, and we'll see if that can get met in that region there. So just saying, oh yeah, I have run out of alerts, so I'll have to shuffle some alerts around later on, but that zone is what I'm looking at for NZD, not NZDs, for NASDAQ. And on the flip side, the supply side of things, it's currently in the zone already, like so. So you can see this buy to sell sort of movement in there. On the 3 minute, you can see the candle that are in question right in there, and you can see the drop, base drop sort of thing in there as well. On the 1 minute, you can see what it's sort of comprised of in a lot more detail, which is useful to see as well. So yeah, that sort of zone right in there, and as we can see, we've already tapped it once. So similarly to US30, if it can come back up in there, maybe get into this last 1 minute order block over here, imbalance fill, tap into there and then come down, then that would make sense as well for the supply side of things. But yeah, you can see a nice clear liquidity capture above this high, drop down. It's definitely broken below here as well, as you can see with the candlestick closures, definitely closed down there. So potentially it could be a redistribution over here, but then also keeping in mind the buys for here, that could also be valid. So that's what I'm potentially looking at for on NASDAQ. And moving on to S&P, it's pretty similar again, so keeping the analysis pretty simple as well at the moment. As we look on the 5 minute time frame, there's a couple zones which I want to keep an eye on. So there's this supply zone, and of course if that one fails, then there is one slightly higher up here. So as you can see, the drop down over here is quite aggressive. It does successfully break structure below this point here. And on the bullish side of things, as you can see, I think it's pretty bit easier to see on this S&P chart. Yeah, there you go. You've got a really nice trend line over there. 1, 2, 3 touches of the trend line, and then you get that sell to buy manipulation. Price dipping below the trend line liquidity and then showing its true strength over there. So keeping that as the main demand zone over here, which looks pretty nice. And I think they're going to be the main two zones for S&P, but as you can see in all of the 3 indices, the zones look very similar, but they're for good reason. They're all in the same zones. But yeah, I think usually out of those 3, the one I trade the most is probably US30 and NASDAQ. I haven't really looked at trading SP too much, but the moves I prefer to see are on NASDAQ and the US30. So there we have that full breakdowns of the pairs and indices that I'm looking at for this week. I'll say it again, if you're someone that wants to actually start benefiting from these sorts of calls, along with live trading calls before they're actually released on YouTube, then you know the drill. Please do just drop me a message on my Instagram saying mentorship, and we'll discuss things further. But with that being said, if you guys enjoyed this video and found value, then please do give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new around here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video for more of that trading sauce.